Hey there. I just had a realization last night. So this is a bit of an ad hoc sharing, I guess. Um, so I've been breastfeeding for 12 continuous years, which is quite an accomplishment, and it's also a little bit odd and not something a lot of people talk about. So I gave birth 12 years ago on the 2nd of November 2011. And I breastfed my first son until he was able to self-wean. I was really hoping it would be a bit sooner than 4 years and 8 months. But by that time, his sister was already here. So I actually breastfed throughout my second pregnancy, actually a couple of miscarriages before then as well. So I gave birth to my daughter, and then I was tandem nursing for about 6 months, and then I couldn't wait for him to get off, and then carried on breastfeeding her through my third pregnancy, and then she came off just as my new son was born. So I've been continuously breastfeeding for 12 years. My youngest is now 5. He's just turned 5 about a week ago. 2 Scorpio sons. But what I noticed is that the start of my journey and the end of my journey equates to a Jupiter cycle. And obviously this is quite a long time to be continuously breastfeeding. And it's not something that many women talk about openly, I don't suppose. It's frowned upon by a lot of people. And for most people, it's not even an option, so I consider myself fortunate that I've had the ability to do it. Because, for most people, when they go back to work, that's when the nursing stops. So I've been very fortunate, and that has been my choice, and the way I've chosen to work, and all of that was so that I could do this. I'm an older mum. I became a mum at 36. I'm now turning 49 next month, and I was really hoping I'd be done with that by the time I was 50. So there you go. There's a lot more information about me than you're probably hoping for today. But what I wanted to show you was, the power of a Jupiter cycle. Like why did breastfeeding come into my Jupiter cycle? Why was it, something that took 12 years? I mean, this is actually my biggest commitment apart from my marriage, but it's my second biggest commitment that I've ever made in my life, and that was to nurse 3 children. And it felt like it was an absolute gift and an honor to do, but it also felt like it was something that was necessary, like it was my job to do it. So, why did this activity occur for 12 years? Why did it take so long? Why didn't it finish? So I just wanted to show you 3 charts, actually 4 charts, because I've also put in a playful asteroid. And I always think asteroids are very, very interesting. They they often show us some hidden wisdom. I always think asteroids make 3D charts into 5D charts. So at the end, I'm just going to share a bit of that. So anyway, I want to share with you the chart of the day I became a mum, so you can see where Jupiter was, and also see where Jupiter was in my chart at birth. Then I'm going to share a chart of the day that I stopped nursing. That was literally last night, the exact time. And the comparison to my chart, and then the 2 charts of when I became a mum and also when I finished breastfeeding, so that you can see the entirety of the Jupiter cycle. And then, just what I've learned from that. It's always interesting, like, it's very easy to use Jupiter, or sorry, any planet really, to plan out your life and see what happens. But sometimes some of the biggest evidences of cycles and us working within cycles occur with the really little things that, we take for granted and we don't pay much attention to. So yeah, I just wanted to share. I mean, this is a very sort of like personal outpouring. It's not about 12 sign forecasts and things like that. This is just a bit of exploratory astrology. So I just wanted to share with you these 3 charts. And if you're a breastfeeding mum as well, or even a chest feeding dad, and you want to share your story with me in private, I'm happy to. I'd love to talk about it. I think it's a great experience. So anyway, this is the chart of the day I became a mum. So this is for those of you that have not seen a chart like this, it's a synastry chart. So here in the middle, that shows where all my planets were at the time, place, and date of my birth. And then around the outside, it's showing the planets and configuration of when my son was born, my first child. Now, and this is something I'll probably share in another video, but I think the connections between birth parents and their children show up very strongly. I've also looked at the birth charts of adopted parents and adopted children, and there are also links there as well. You know, there's always a reason why we get the particular caretakers that we end up with. And, you know, it's kind of interesting. So, for instance, you know, this is where my moon and Jupiter is, and Ceres, which is the goddess of, well, she's like Mother Earth. She is the goddess of mums, really. She is the good earth goddess mother type. So it's not surprising that mine is next to the moon and Jupiter, given that I've just shared I've been breastfeeding continuously for 12 years. But yeah, on the day that my first son was born, his ascendant was exactly on my moon and Ceres, and very, very close to my Jupiter. And then his son was right on my ascendant. So you often see these kinds of links between eldest, in particular, it's eldest children, because obviously when you become a mum or a dad, but in particular with the mums, because they're the ones that are physically changing usually, you know, that's where you see a chart that comes in and it changes your chart. You know, it is so clearly aligned with your chart that you can see that a change is occurring. You know, so when he arrived, it went over my ascendant, really showing that something was really going on with my body, and that there's something about his spirit that really connects into my psyche, my desire to look after and nourish him, and also my desire for well-being for him and for us together, that sort of sense of a bond. Yeah, so that's the day he came in. Now, you can see in my birth chart that Jupiter is in a very tight conjunction with my moon. And like I said, Ceres is in between, but she's right on my moon. Now, in astrology, there's lots of different ways of looking at the planets, and the planets all seem to have a little bit of a, you know, they represent different things. And so, you know, many people say that the sun is like our personality or our ego. And many people say that the moon here is like our psyche, our emotions, the spiritual, intuitive, psychic aspect of us. In many ways, like the moon is also there to show us our connection to the unseen world. And I really feel like in birthing and bringing a human forwards, or in helping somebody die, I'm not talking about killing them, but, you know, like, you know, people that work in hospices and things like that, you know, when you're around people that are incarnating or departing, you know, I think the moon really shows a bit of that journey as well. So yeah, my moon's in the sign of Pisces, Jupiter is right there, and Ceres is right there, showing that if you think of the sign of Pisces, it's very unboundaried. It doesn't do boundaries very well at all. It seems highly emotional, highly connected in terms of intuition, and I would say selflessness is quite a Piscean trait, especially in the moon. You know, and we've got the moon and Virgo, and in particular Sagittarius and Gemini. They're known as the mutable signs, but they're very much of service, being at service. In particular, this polarity here between Virgo and Pisces, it's very much about how we can serve each other and serve humanity, or serve consciousness. So there's something very strong there for me in terms of wanting to explore consciousness and connection and feel that sense of oneness, and maybe sense that feeling of oneness from the perspective of Ceres. Now, you know, a cynical person, or actually quite a rational person, or a rational astrologer could look at this and say, okay, this is a clear template for a helicopter mum, you know, a mum that's always buzzing around and being important and taking control and really being too fussy, you know, creating too much of a nest. And they might be right. But it's a real strong place of intimacy in my chart, put it that way. So it's clear, you could say that my experience of motherhood, represented by Ceres and the moon, like the moon also represents children, in particular our infants. And if you think of how quickly a child changes and grows. It's very much how quickly the moon moves and shifts and grows. And of course, children are very instinctive. They are absolutely themselves until they learn the sort of egoic side of things from the sun and from all the people around them. So, you know, the moon really shows the instincts of young children and vulnerable, like it's that aspect of tenderness that could almost be trampled on. It's vulnerable, it needs protecting. And so here you've got Ceres, which wants to protect and nurture and look after, and you've got the moon together. So you could say that I'm possibly overprotective or over kind or over mothering, who knows, but I hold my hand up to that, it's fine. And I'm just saying it was just what felt right for me in my situation, and I'm not saying that my way is the way of doing it, not at all. I think everyone finds the right mum for them and the right kind of mothering parenting relationship. And so Jupiter here is showing where we do things in excess, where we expand, where we take things too far, but also where we feel joy and where we feel gratitude and where we feel thankfulness and optimistic and hopeful. And so this whole thing here, I think I was always going to be hopeful. I came from a family of short breastfeeders, i.e. people that maybe there's a family story that nobody could really breastfeed for very long, that 6 weeks and we're done. And actually, you know, from a lot of people's perspective, 6 weeks is absolutely enough. And I just think any kind of connection that we have with our young infants is what's needed. But yeah, so it's quite possible that I set myself the intention. In fact, I did use hypnotherapy because I'm trained in that. I used it during my pregnancy to convince myself that I would be able to have a natural and easy relationship with nursing. And so, yeah, that's what's happened. So yeah, Jupiter's a very important part of my chart and also a very important part of my mothering journey. And it was set off really nicely. You know, the birth I had with my son was quick, and it was easy, and he was able to latch on straight away. And you really sort of get a sense of that, you know, with the sun and the ascendant together, his ascendant and my moon and Jupiter and Ceres. It's like there's no restrictions, there were no boundaries between us. And so at the time of birth, Jupiter is here just in the 6th house. Now I want to share with you the chart now of my decision to end nursing. So here we've got my chart still in the middle. So you'll see I've still got my moon, my Ceres, my Jupiter. And then obviously there's my sun here. There's my ascendant. Now, interestingly, and I hadn't noticed this actually until just a moment ago, but which way am I going? Wrong way. On the day I gave birth, like the exact moment that I started my breastfeeding journey, also the ascendant of the start of that chart was right on my moon and Jupiter. And then on the moment that I made that decision with my son that we were ending nursing, not the same son, where's my 3rd child? Look, the descendant is right on the moon and Jupiter and Ceres. And it's kind of interesting because like you've got the ascendant, which really represents the birthing and it represents our arrival. And then the descendant is opposite that. Now, I'm not saying the descendant represents our departure, but it's the departure from ourselves. You know, like if everything in the 1st house is about you and your body and you being born and being here, then the descendant is everything that's not about your birth and not about you. It's about everyone else's birth. It's about everyone else's needs, etc. So it's kind of fascinating to me that on the day I started breastfeeding, it was connected to the ascendant of the start chart. And on the day that I finished nursing, the descendant was connected on it. So it was no longer about the birthing, and it was about everyone else in the equation. It's not needed anymore, and it's certainly not needed for me. It wasn't really needed for my son. Now, in both of these, you'll see that Jupiter is pretty much in the same place. So at the time of my first son's birth, it was at 4 degrees 40 retrograde in the sign of Taurus, and on the date of me stopping, it was at 7 degrees Taurus. So it's a little bit longer than a Jupiter cycle, but only by like 3 degrees. And it actually went exact, like the Jupiter return happened in June, and funnily enough, it came up as a subject of, it felt like the right time, but there were other factors going on in our lives at that time, and it just didn't feel like the right moment. And now it is, and we're already celebrating it in our home. It's happened. So yeah, very interesting. Now, where does this Jupiter fit into my chart? These two Jupiters, well, it's fitting in my 6th house. Now, if we think about the 6th house, because like here's my 6th house, and here's the Jupiter, the transiting Jupiter, and there it is at the time that I became a mum. So the 6th house is all about our everyday routine. It's about our physical health. It's about our home, how we manage our home, our job. I mentioned right at the start, it felt like a job, it felt like something I was committed to, and it definitely had to fit into our routine. And so it's interesting that, the change started when it was here and it ended when it was here. And of course, the 6th house is associated, if it was associated to any star sign, any zodiac sign, it would be associated with Virgo, the 6th sign. If you think of Virgo, it is about natural health and healing, doing things for health reasons, things being fit for purpose, making things fit in, being organized enough to do it. And so all of that has really come into play. I've had to be quite organized to be able to do it. And I've made changes to ensure that I was able to, because it was an important thing for me. So the last chart I want to share, and that's the actual journey of the breastfeeding. So the chart that it started and the chart when it ended, and you can clearly see the two Jupiters next to each other, so close. So you can see it's a full Jupiter cycle. Jupiter's gone all the way around, and it's ended up back here. So yeah, it's quite significant. A couple of other things that are interesting, there's a couple of Saturn connections there as well, and Saturn is obviously very much about starting and stopping things. So here we've got Saturn stopping, or like cutting on the Chiron point, almost showing that care or that loving thing, that thing to protect a child, is being stopped. And then here we've got Saturn on the internal ring and Venus on the outside. And the way I'm looking at that is, yes, we've had this routine, and yes, it's been there to create a structure, and then kindness comes in to stop it. At some point, everyone has to grow up and grow beyond, and become independent, and do their own things. And it's so close to the 8th house as well. The 8th house is all about life cycles, and where we start a life cycle, where we move forwards, and where we move on to the next stage. And interestingly, the South Node is also in a conjunction with Venus right on this original Saturn. So yeah, it feels like there is a change. Now, the last chart I want to show you, and this is just the power and the fun of asteroids. So there are well over 10,000 asteroids that are named, and I use them quite a bit. I love using named asteroids. So when I'm doing my regular client work, if somebody's describing a situation that they're in, I will often find a word associated with that situation. It might be an asteroid with their name. For instance, there's an asteroid Louisa, which I use sometimes, or I use the asteroids to do with my children and my husband's name. You can do all sorts of things, but like in terms of rising up or asteroid talent, asteroid house, weirdly, years ago, I actually got a comment on one of my channels from somebody whose husband had named asteroid either house or talent. I think it was asteroid house. And this woman had taken the time to say, look, my late husband named that asteroid, and I forbid you to use it. You cannot ever make reference to asteroid house again. Wow. Obviously I've continued to, and there's not much you can do about that. It's in the public domain, isn't it? And I wasn't really dishonoring her husband, but from her perspective, I was. But anyway, there's asteroid Milky. So I thought, why don't I put it in and just see what Milky shows up as? So this is my birth chart again. Now, interestingly, Milky, like the idea of like being somebody who gives milk a lot, is showing up in the 10th house, which is, I think, a place of achievement, a place of recognition, a place where we see part of our external identity, like, you know, how we might describe ourselves. It also shows what we do really well and what we stand for and how we stand in the world. Interestingly, it's in the sign of Virgo, which again is very much about, you know, serving others, and being a bit self-sacrificing, and also about natural health and healing, which was one of the main reasons why I wanted to do it in the first place. And isn't it fascinating? I think it is anyway. That it is exactly opposite my Ceres to do with mothering, and also Jupiter, and also my moon. So it's inextricably linked in that chart to milk. So, you know, I guess my final thought on this is there are patterns within patterns within patterns. You know, life is always going to show us these amazing patterns. And sometimes, you know, the things that we're going through in life are so small that we don't realize just how special a pattern is. But it was a pattern that I noticed last night. You know, I stopped breastfeeding, had a cry, thought, okay, it's the end of an era. Let's just check out that chart. And then it was like, oh my God. Yeah. So my last thought then is, what cycles are showing up for you right now? You know, have you had like these 12-year cycles? Have you, you know, what have you noticed about your 12-year cycles? And if they are showing, if you are having cycles that show up in 11.8 to 12 month cycles, sorry, 12-year cycles, where is your Jupiter in your chart, and what does the placement of your Jupiter say about how you express doing something a little bit more than usual, doing things a little bit more, going a bit above and beyond, and so on and so forth. So it's just a few thoughts I wanted to share. Not entirely sure who this will appeal to. It's a bit like, you know, too much information, but you know, there you go. That's how I am. So anyway, I hope you're all really well in your life, and I hope you get the chance to appreciate the magic of cycles. Lots of love to you. Bye for now.